welcome to another edition of Paratalk. I'm Gareth Davis, and once again I'm joined by paranormal enthusiast Reeves Cook. And this week we discuss the Oakville Blob Mystery. Now, Reeves, this is a strange one. Tell us a little bit about this. What do you mean by blob?
Yeah. Now, you've heard of the phenomenon where people say it rained fish, and and it's kind of those kind of strange phenomenon where people suddenly get these encounter massive rainstorms and all these animals fall from the sky or whatever. This is a similar thing. This happened back in 1994. Okay. Now, when I say blob, it's more of a jelly or jello, as you guys call it, phenomenon. Back in 1994, there's a small town, Oakville in Washington. Right. Now, the population around nearly just under 700, so it's a small town. Okay. Not a lot of people. Very closely knit. And this happened to them over a number of weeks, this phenomenon, over a number of weeks, and then it kind of ceased. So,
so basically, these kind of gelatin, kind of jelly blobs, clear blobs, fell from the sky.
Yeah.
Did they fall during like a rainstorm or just on a clear day?
Well, it happened early in the morning on the night of August the 7th, 1994. Okay. One of the first witnesses to encounter this phenomenon and this event was a local police officer. And he was doing his normal nightly patrol. And it started to rain, just raining. They just thought it was raining. Right. And it wasn't until that the rain got so bad that he decided to put his windscreen wipers on and clear the windscreen, because it was getting difficult to see where they were going, because he was with a friend and just doing his rounds. And when he put his windscreen wipers on, the whole windscreen just blurred. And, as you can imagine, if you'd put oil on the windscreen and then tried to clean it with water, it just all blurred.
So you couldn't see? It just blurred the whole screen, the windshield up. You couldn't see anything outside of it?
Couldn't see anything. It was just totally blurred. So they decided to pull over and, investigate what this was on the windscreen, because it certainly wasn't water. They pulled over at a local fuel station, and the police officer decided that to be on the safe side, because it was unusual, this stuff certainly was unusual that was on the car, that he would put his protective, the scenes of crime gloves, the white gloves they put on.
Right. So to protect his hands, so he didn't know what it was, right? It could have been like acid or something.
No idea. Right. It was just some glutinous mass that had just rained out of the sky onto his vehicle, and basically they couldn't drive the car anymore because it was impossible to see out the windscreen. Okay. He cleared it with his hands, kind of scooping it up, and he immediately noticed that to him it was like the texture of jelly. Okay. Like a gelatin mix of something. He cleaned it all away, cleaned the windscreen, and they went about their business, thinking no more of it. Now, unbeknown to him and other people in the town, this phenomenon, we call it a rain phenomenon, just so people can get an idea in their head that this actually came from above. This was over a 20 square mile radius. It just wasn't in a small area. It actually covered a very large area that night, and it rained very heavily. It came down incredibly heavy. So in the morning. So it's a night of heavy rain, and most places in the world will deal with that occasionally. A night of extremely heavy rain. What they understood was heavy rain, but it actually wasn't rain. It was this gelatin stuff. Oh, wait a second. So let's try and clear this up for myself and maybe our listeners. Okay. So the rain itself wasn't rain. It was the blobs. It was the blobs, the gelatin blobs. But was it like rain with the blobs mixed in, or pure, just these jelly? Pure. We call it goo. Oh my gosh! Wow. And this fell over a 20-mile radius.
Well,
and this didn't
you gotta
happen
think.
once.
I mean, for 20 miles, no rain, just the blobs. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. This is why the police officer decided that he was going to be careful and wear gloves to remove this whatever it was off of his windscreen. Now, another individual. The morning came and people started to get up and let their animals out. An older lady, Dottie Hearn, she, one of the townsfolk, she decided to let her dog out in the garden and do his thing. And she, obviously, as soon as she came out, she saw all this stuff everywhere. Clear, jelly-type residue all over the grass, the plants. And she touched it and picked it up, and she said it was like a mixture of like melted, like jelly, that kind of texture to it. Had a strange kind of texture to it, and she thought no more of it. She just thought, oh well, that was strange.
But this stuff was everywhere, right? Covering everything. It must have
everything. Well, you see, a lot of people didn't really pay much attention because they thought maybe sleet or something like that. And it wasn't until that afternoon of the following evening, that afternoon after the rain, I'm calling it rain to put into people's minds that it came from the sky, but this phenomenon happened that it started to affect people. The first person to become affected by this was the police officer. Now, what happened to him was, in the afternoon, he started to feel like he had the symptoms of a flu. Okay. Like when you start to get hot flushes and your energy starts to dip and you start to get that kind of head feeling, that kind of stuffy head. All those symptoms. He thought nothing of it. He just thought he was getting
getting sick, right?
A cold.
He was getting sick. So,
Yeah, just getting run down, getting sick. But what happened was that it didn't stop there. He started to get respiratory problems. He started to find it hard to breathe, and he also found that doing things like talking and walking was becoming very, very difficult.
What's the time period from when he touched this stuff to when this started to happen to him? Do you know?
The rain phenomenon. The phenomenon happened on August the 7th at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
The following afternoon, shall we say 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, was when the police officer started to feel the effects.
Now, how did he put those two things together, though? Couldn't it have been that he was just getting sick and it wasn't related to this stuff?
Yeah. Firstly, he didn't go to he didn't decide to go to the doctor or anything like that because he just thought, I've got the symptoms of a common cold. I'm just going to, ignore it. Right. And it wasn't until later afternoon that he started to have problems with his breathing, serious problems, that he decided to go to the doctors, the clinic, and get seen. And they decided to keep him in and for observation and stuff.
Right.
But interestingly, that the older lady, Dottie Hearn, she also, around that same time, a little bit later, but around that same time, she started to experience some symptoms that were similar but not the same.
Okay, and she also touched the gelatin thing in her backyard also.
She picked it up and she felt it, the texture of it. She wondered what it was and then just thought, oh, okay. And went about her business.
Well, let's pause for a second here and digest what we've learned so far with this strange, clear blob-like substance that's fallen from the sky, amazingly in a 20-mile radius. Let's take a short break, and then we'll come back and continue with this very strange but also fascinating story. We'll be right back.
You can now hear all of the Mindset Central podcast while on the go with the Stitcher Smart Radio app. On-demand news, talk, and more on your mobile phone. The latest episodes at Mindset Central are always available for you. No syncing needed and no memory or storage wasted. Available on your iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and beyond. Downloading is easy. Go to Stitcher.com or check out your app store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to MindsetCentral.com.
You're listening to the Mindset Network.
The Mind Tech Podcast is your weekly dose of tech, privacy, security, and conspiracy. Each week, the Mind Tech Podcast will talk about the very latest tech news and the continued threats to internet freedom. Hosted by Garrett Davis and Joe Resington. You can download and subscribe to the Mind Tech Podcast at MindsetCentral.com.
And we're back. Okay, Reeve, so when we left the air, we were talking about two individuals who had physical contact with this clear blob-like substance, and both of these individuals had become sick. Were there any more people that got ill because of this?
There were others. There were a number of people that had the effects of what they call a very serious flu symptom. Sneezing, respiratory problems. Unlike normal flu, it didn't last maybe a week, but it lasted a number of weeks. Some people were hospitalized because of it. But I want to get back to Dottie Hearn and her symptoms.
Yeah, what happened to her?
She was at home, and she was starting to feel sick. But the thing is, she had different symptoms. She was getting symptoms of vertigo, dizzy spells, and she was starting to vomit because she was becoming dizzy. She tried to get to the bathroom but collapsed. Sometime later, only a short time, but her daughter found her, raised the alarm, and she was taken to hospital in an ambulance, and they kept her there for a number of days. And their diagnosis, the hospital's diagnosis, was all the symptoms that she had experienced were those of an incredibly bad ear infection. Now, the daughter of Dottie had done something very clever. She, at the same time, had taken a scoop sample of this residue, which was in the garden, and put it in a little bottle and taken it to the hospital where her mother went and said, look, this stuff's in our garden. My mother said she touched it. I know it's unlikely, but could there be a possible connection? So
she thought that there is a connection between this then, obviously, because she had the forethought to collect this and take it to the hospital.
Yeah. She took some in a little like a little test tube with a top on it and gave it to the medical staff, and they put it into their labs, and as due course they ran some tests on it. They did all the normal tests that you normally do, and here's something interesting. Even though this residue, this material they couldn't say exactly what it was. One of the things that it did contain was human white blood cells.
Really?
Yeah, but there was no structure to the material. But it also it was they came up with, well, that was that what is in it. That's what's in it. So we don't know what it is, but we can tell you what we found in it. Obviously, their research had gone to that point, and that was the end of that. But it wasn't really the end of it, because even though the family did try to get more answers, they weren't forthcoming. So sometime later, they decided that the samples that they took when there was residue, they took it to a private medical facility who did more detailed tests on it. Once again, they found the human white blood cells, but they also found two other things: 2 different types of bacteria that come from the human gut.
What?
Now, yeah, in this stuff, whatever it was, this jello stuff, which fell from the sky. I just want to reiterate, not once. They had, over this town, over a period of 3 weeks, they had 6 downpours.
Oh, so it wasn't just that one incident then. It
No.
happened again and again.
Yeah, 6 times over a 3-week period, they had these downpours of this jello rain. And it pretty much coated everything. And one of the theories is, that firstly they thought, well, maybe it's airliners dumping their human waste.
Well, that's usually the common explanation for pretty much anything that falls from the sky, right? I mean, we have cases where kidney beans or peas will fall from the sky, or fish, or who knows what. Very strange things fall from the sky, and the most common explanation is, it's probably a plane flying over, or the cargo door was open, or things of that. But I don't know whether that applies to this or many of the others.
That avenue was actually, they did pursue that avenue. They thought, well, let's think logical. An aircraft flying over an area, if it dumps anything out of itself, it's going to be spread over a large area.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's contact the FAA and have a word with them, and because they are in a flight path. And the FAA got back to them and said, well, no, it was nothing to do with us, because all of our human waste on our aircraft, if it was to be dumped, but all of our human waste is dyed blue.
Yeah, well, the human waste they're talking about is when you use the bathroom on a plane, right?
Yeah.
And it's what we have here. I mean, this is human blood cells and bacteria from a human stomach.
Yeah, well,
that's probably not going to show up from someone flushing the toilet on a plane,
Yeah, so that theory basically was shelved and was forgotten all about. Now, let's just go back before this phenomenon actually happened. A lot of the residents were starting to question, because this phenomenon was ongoing for a number of weeks, and it was happening on a fairly regular basis, and it wasn't just in a small area, it was over a large area. They started to question what was going on, and they started to look towards the military.
Yeah.
Now, there are where the town is there, and because of being quite a small population, there is a lot of military activity in that area, because over the ocean they do the Air Force do bombing runs, and they also do aircraft maneuvers out to sea and things like that. Training, they do their live training and stuff.
Okay.
And a lot of the individuals said that before this phenomenon actually started, that there was an increase in military air activity. One of the theories, I just want to get this theory in before I throw something else into the pot, is, now this is quite a funny one. Somebody came up with a theory that maybe if they were doing live bombing runs over the ocean, that they were dropping bombs and they were exploding under the sea, and that the pieces of jellyfish were being blown up, and that the jellyfish were going up into the sky, into the clouds, and getting put into the clouds, and the clouds were coming over, and it was raining down bits of jellyfish. And that's
that sounds
that theory
a little,
once again.
Well, let me ask you this: I know that sounds a little bizarre, but Oakville itself in Washington, how close is that to the ocean or a large body of water?
There is a body of water, and there is. I can't give you actually the miles and everything, but they're not that far from these military maneuvers, and they seem to be in the vicinity of a lot of aircraft overhead.
Okay.
A lot of the residents noted. One of the things that Dottie Hearn said was that she noted, thinking back, that there were a lot of aircraft flying overhead, a lot of large aircraft carrying, like the big carrier aircraft and stuff. And one of the interesting things that she did note was she said a lot of the aircraft that she didn't recognize were all black and they were unmarked.
That is interesting.
That she couldn't see any markings on them.
Now, so military activity, flying over near bodies of water, the jellyfish explanation seems a little far-fetched, but who knows?
Yeah.
What other kind of explanations were thrown into the fray here to try and explain this?
Well, they were the two main ones. There were other things like, whirlwinds at sea and that kind of stuff. But we still, when we look at stuff like that, we still don't understand that how medical practitioners, professionals found white human blood cells in this gelatin mass, and how they found bacteria that's normally in the human gut, and how that gets into the mixing pot. The military was approached, but obviously they denied anything at all to do with this. They said we do carry out live operations over the ocean, and we do fly over that area, but we don't. This has nothing to do with us.
All right. But then again, they would say that anyway. Whether it was them or not, they deny it. Yeah.
But for me, there definitely is something more going on here. And what sort of the red flag for me is when the townsfolk, mainly this older lady, Dottie Hearn, she spoke up and said, a lot of the aircraft that were being witnessed were unmarked and black.
Yeah,
it seems to me that whatever this phenomenon was, that there was something being prepared a long time before, well, not a long time, but time before the event actually transpired and happened. Whether it was some form of covert test on human subjects to see that, some sort of chemical, say chemical warfare, but some sort of chemical test, which we know does go on because it happened here in England back, I think it was the 70s, where the government would have found out to be spraying certain chemicals over rural areas of England and towns in England to see how it would affect the populace. And I believe personally that we have a similar thing here. But what I don't understand is that what is it they were actually dropping? What it's got human blood cells in it, and it's got bacteria in it. What the fuck's going on there?
That's the bizarre thing, but you're absolutely correct. I mean, it really does seem like that this was some kind of military operation where they sprayed or dropped something on the area for who knows what reason.
Unfortunately, there are no samples left. Some of the people did actually keep samples, but when they had this testing going on, they used a lot of it up to actually find out. I'm not a scientist. I don't know how these samples work, but I do know that when they take samples, they have to use a lot of it to find out a little bit of information. So these samples that were taken at the time, they were basically all used up. So we have got today, when we look back at this event, which happened in 1994, something that was truly mind-boggling. Is it paranormal? No. Is it aliens and UFOs? No. Is it something deeply covert and secretive?
Yeah.
I think so. I really do think so.
To answer those questions, we simply don't know whether it was paranormal, UFOs, or military. We don't know. But the probability is that it was some kind of military covert action. But we don't know for sure. This is just, So things like this, Reeves, I mean, we get many, many cases of strange objects falling from the sky going way back, going back hundreds of years, in fact, to some reports.
Oh, yeah.
So this is just another tale that can add to that long list that does have a possible military explanation.
In this case, I think so. For this case, I think that there was some sort of test being done. Obviously, as you said earlier, that if the military are involved, even on a dark level, on a black level, they're not going to admit to it. It's interesting that the townsfolk saw
something else to think about too is that when you turn in an unknown substance that has human cells and bacteria from the human stomach that's rained all over a place, you'd think that people would be very much into that and want to find out exactly what it was, not kind of brush it under the carpet.
Well, I think a lot of people started to get a little bit concerned when their animals started to die, because on I think it was the second or third occasion, there were a number of townsfolk. Once again, this is a very small, it's 600, just under 700 people. Some of the people that animals would go outside, they had outside animals, became ill and died. They died. So I think a lot of people started to become concerned. But like anything, it's when you turn to the powers that be and start to ask questions, and you get told, "Well, it's nothing to do with us." I think you don't know what else to do.
That's the par for the course, though. That's what they'd say. For me, what makes this unusual is the general lack of interest and dismissal when evidence is presented, and then the fact that the evidence just kind of goes away and vanishes over time. That's very strange. That kind of makes me think, well, what's really going on here?
It was maybe so many dead ends were... Because, Dottie Hearn and her family, they actually, as I mentioned earlier, they actually tried to pursue it privately, but they only had so much samples. They could only find out so much information, because when they went back to the hospital with the original samples they had, the hospital simply told them, yes, it's got these cells in it, but that was it. They couldn't tell them anymore.
Now, you mentioned that this happens on 6 occasions over a few weeks.
It rained over a 3-week period, yes.
So that's an awful lot of evidence. So this stuff, I'm assuming, would not have a very long life. It would dissolve and vanish fairly quickly, right?
Yeah, it was a clear gluteous gel which would fall like rain onto and then it would dry and then kind of crystallize. And then that was it. It was gone.
Interesting.
So its lifespan, once it had fallen and landed, its lifespan was, it was limited. It didn't stain or anything like that. It was a clear gel. It fell, it dried, it crystallized, and then it was gone.
Now, something else. We're coming to the end of our time together here, but something else we want to just throw into the mix here, which may or may not be related, is that, the phenomena of chemtrails. A lot of people have reported that chemtrails will occasionally, not very often, but occasionally come down low and touch the ground and leave a strange gelatinous substance behind.
Yeah. I think this would actually, really, if this definitely would kind of slot into that kind of arena of strange the sky kind of chemtrail phenomenon, this kind of phenomenon. There has been other phenomenon around the world. I think it was in India when it rained. It basically rained blood.
Yeah. These strange things falling from the sky, they're not new. You look in any book that talks about strange phenomena, and there'll be several cases of fish, beans, peas, just weird stuff that falls from the sky. With no real rational explanation. Lots of theories, the whirlwind theory, the airplane theory, all these theories, but no rock-solid conclusion as to what could be causing this. All right, then, Reeves. We're kind of at the end of our time here for this week's Paratalk. Great topic, great discussion as always. Thank you so much for listening, listeners, and we'll be back very soon with more Paratalk.